Welcome back. We're going to continue the chapter that we were just on. So we were just having a battle between Ares and Percy, and now all of a sudden the cops got there. Looks at that kid on TV. What the heck? That guy's armed, another cop said. Call for backup. I rolled to one side as Ares' blades slashed the sand. I ran for my sword, scooped it up, and launched a swipe at Ares' face, only to find my blade deflected again. Ares seemed to know exactly what I was going to do the moment before I did it. I stepped back toward the surf, forcing him to follow. Admit it, kid, Ares said. You got no hope. I'm just toying with you. My senses were working overtime. I now understood what Annabeth had said about ADHD helping keep you alive in battle. I was wide awake, noticing every little detail. I could see where Ares was tensing. I could tell which way he would strike. At the same time, I was aware of Annabeth and Grover 30 feet to my left. I saw a second cop car pull up, siren wailing. Spectators, people who had been wandering the streets because of the earthquake, were starting to gather. Among the crowd, I thought I saw a few who were walking with the strange, trotting gait of a disguised satyrs. There were shimmering forms of spirits, too, as if the dead had risen from Hades to watch the battle. I heard the flap of leathery wings circling somewhere above. More sirens. I stepped farther into the water, but Ares was fast. The tip of his blade ripped my sleeve and grazed my forearm. A police voice on a megaphone said, Drop the guns! Set them on the ground! Now! Guns? I looked at Ares' weapon, and it seemed to be flickering. Sometimes it looked like a shotgun, sometimes a two-handed sword. I didn't know what the humans were seeing in my hands, but I was pretty sure it wouldn't make them like me. Ares turned and glared at spectators, which gave me a moment to breathe. There were 5 police cars now, in a line of officers crouching behind them, pistols trained on us. This is a private matter, Ares bellowed. Be gone! He swept his hand and a wall of red flame rolled across the patrol cars. The police barely had time to dive for cover before their vehicles exploded. The crowd behind them scattered, screaming. Ares roared with laughter. Oh no, little hero! Let's add you to the barbecue! He slashed. I deflected his blade. I got close enough to strike, tried to fake him out with a feint, but my blow was knocked aside. The waves were hitting me in the back now. Ares was up to his thighs, wading in after me. I felt the rhythm of the sea, the waves growing larger as the tide rolled in, and suddenly I had an idea. Little waves, I thought, and the water behind me seemed to recede. I was holding back the tide by force of will. The tension was building like carbonation behind a cork. Ares came toward, grinning confidently. I lowered my blade as if I were too exhausted to go on. Wait for it, I told the sea. The pressure now was almost lifting me off my feet. Ares raised his sword. I released the tide and jumped, rocketing straight over Ares on a wave. A 6-foot wall of water smashed him full in the face, leaving him cursing and sputtering with a mouthful of seaweed. I landed behind him with a splash and feinted toward his head, as I'd done before. He turned in time to raise his sword, but this time he was disoriented. He didn't anticipate the trick. I changed direction, lunged to the side, and stabbed Riptide straight down in the water, sending the point through the god's heel. The roar that followed made Hades' earthquake look like a minor event. The very sea was blasted back from Ares, leaving a wet circle of sand 50 feet wide. Ichor, the golden blood of the gods, flowed from a gash in the war god's boot. The expression on his face was beyond hatred. It was pain, shock, complete disbelief that he'd been wounded. He limped toward me, muttering ancient Greek curses. Something stopped him. It was as if a cloud covered the sun, but worse. Light faded. Sound and color drained away. A cold, heavy presence passed over the beach, slowing time, dropping the temperature to freezing, and making me feel like life was hopeless. Fighting was useless. The darkness lifted. Ares looked stunned. Police cars were burning behind us. The crowd of spectators had fled. Annabeth and Grover stood on the beach in shock, watching the water flood back around Ares' feet, his glowing golden ichor dissipating in the tide. Ares lowered his sword. You have made an enemy, godling, he told me. You have sealed your fate. Every time you raise your blade in battle, every time you hope for success, you will feel my curse. Beware, Perseus Jackson. Beware! His body began to glow. Percy! Annabeth shouted. Don't watch! I turned away as the god Ares revealed his true immortal form. I somehow knew that if I looked, I would disintegrate into ashes. The light died. I looked back, Ares was gone, the tide rolled out to reveal Hades' bronze helm of darkness. I picked it up and walked toward my friends. But before I got there, I heard the flapping of leathery wings. 3 evil-looking grandmothers with lace hats and fiery whips drifted down from the sky and landed in front of me. Are you kidding me? The middle fury, the one who had been Mrs. Dodd, stepped forward. Her fangs were bared, but for once she didn't look threatening. She looked more disappointed, as if she'd been planning to have me for supper, but had decided I might give her indigestion. "We saw the whole thing," she hissed. "So it truly was not you." I tossed her the helmet, which she caught in surprise. "Return that to the Lord of Hades," I said. "Tell him the truth. Tell him to call off the war." She hesitated, then a forked tongue over her green, leathery lips. "Live well, Perseus Jackson. Become a true hero. Because if you ever come into my clutches again." "Ha ha ha ha!" she cackled, savoring the idea. Then she and her sisters rose on their bat wings, fluttered into the smoke-filled sky, and disappeared. I joined Grover and Annabeth, who were staring at me in amazement. "Percy," Grover said, "that was so incredibly..." "Terrifying," said Annabeth. "Cool," Grover corrected. I didn't feel terrified. I certainly didn't feel cool. I was tired and sore and completely drained of energy. "Did you guys feel that? Whatever it was?" I asked. They both nodded uneasily. "Must have been the Furies overhead," Grover said. But I wasn't so sure. Something had stopped Ares from killing me, and whatever could do that was a lot stronger than the Furies. I looked at Annabeth, and an understanding passed between us. I knew now that what was in that pit, what had spoken from the entrance of Tartarus. I reclaimed my backpack from Grover and looked inside. The master boat was still there, such a small thing to almost cause World War III. "We have to get back to New York," I said, "by tonight." "That's impossible," Annabeth said, "unless we..." "Fly," I agreed. She stared at me. "Fly like in an airplane, which you were warned never do lest Zeus strike you out of the sky, and carrying a weapon that has more destructive power than a nuclear bomb?" "Yeah," I said, "pretty much exactly like that. Come on." This is scary. I don't know if this is a good idea at all. It does not sound good for Percy and company. Next chapter is called I Settle My Tab. As Annie says, we'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully the sun will come out.